Hey folks, so today we're going to cover chapter 5, but before we get into it, I am halfway around, well, maybe between a third and halfway through grading your first exam. I know I said that I would start contacting everyone the ending of this week. Is probably going to be Monday. I want to be thorough and make sure that I do it properly. So bear with me. I got 100 papers to do, but you will start receiving emails from me on Monday. I apologize for it's taking a little bit longer than I had anticipated. I have a lot of good papers, so that's a good thing. Yay. Okay, so today we're going to cover chapter 5, and then next week I'm going to send you an upgraded syllabus because of the winter storm. We are a little bit off on our schedule, so I'll send that out to you on Monday. But in this chapter, we're going to talk about political parties, the evolution of the party system in Texas, particularly the importance of organization, the functions of political parties in our political system in Texas, and let's go. Okay. So we have a competitive two-party system, and we've seen a lot of surveys, especially recently, of a lot of people having discontent, feeling that the two parties that we do have, they don't particularly align themselves with. For the first time, probably in political history, we have a majority of Americans saying that they're either independent, in the middle, or don't fully align with either party. But for the most part, the most competitive we have thus far are Republican and Democrats. In Texas in particularly, the competition with Democrats has really started to come up. Republicans have governed in Texas and dominated Texas politics for decades. And within the last 2 or 3 election cycles, we've seen a change where some races that were not seen as competitive before, meaning it was just assumed that Republicans would win, are now extremely competitive. And some are being defeated by Democrats. So that's a big difference going on right now. In a political system that we have characterized by a two-party system, we do have minor parties in Texas. For instance, we do have, when you go, you will see other parties that are listed. You'll also see some candidates, depending on the race, running as an independent. So it's sometimes not just Republicans and Democrats. A lot of the times when you're trying to decide which candidates you're going to support, you look at their platform, you look at their where they are on positions, and you look at and so when we say platform, that means you look at where they stand on certain positions. Do you agree or disagree? And then you decide if you want to align yourself with that person. In Texas in particular, we have 2 strong ideologies, conservatives and liberals. And the ideology can cross over party lines. For instance, we have many people in Texas who align themselves and say that they are conservative Democrats, which mean they are fiscally conservative they could be fiscal. An example of that could be they could be strong on fiscal conservatism, but be socially aligned on social issues, or liberal on social issues. So conservatives, as we went over in the first chapter, is aligned with more traditional values and expecting the government to do very little to help, versus liberal, which assumes that the government should have a more proactive role in regulating and in helping. We never thought that a pandemic would become political, but it has. We're seeing an alignment in the pandemic. Many conservatives feel that it should be up to each individual to determine if they want to stay at home, keep their businesses closed, want to wear a mask. Many liberals feel that it is the government's job to tell us if we have to wear a mask, if we need to shut down our businesses, when it will be safe to open up the state. So even something like a pandemic has now become political, and you're seeing lines being drawn based on ideologies, meaning conservatives feel that the government should have less intervention in your personal everyday lives. Liberals feel that government should have a very strong and proactive role in regulating the economy, regulating our social everyday lives. In your textbook, they used Ted Cruz as a figure for conservative values and conservatives in Texas. Another example that's not in your textbook is Dan Crenshaw. He is a new representative who was just elected on the West Side. He became nationally famous when there was a skit on Saturday Night Live that made fun of the fact that he was injured while being in the service. He had his eye injured and he wears a patch. And the actors on Saturday Night Live made fun of that. And our representative, when I say our Texas representative, Dan Crenshaw, actually got national attention by going on Saturday Night Live and was pretty gracious, and they actually made a skit and they apologized on national television for making fun of him for being injured while being in service in the law enforcement area. So those are two examples of conservatives in Texas. Examples of liberals in Texas, a long-standing, popular, very much so with Democrats, Sheila Jackson Lee, Representative Sheila Jackson Lee. That is an example of a liberal policies, liberal politics in Texas. Another example is nationally is AOC. She has really taken the platform to another level with progressive politics, and she came to Texas during the winter storm. So she has been the face of progressives. Bernie Sanders, even though he's a registered socialist, is another national figure when you're talking about socialism and liberalism. So until the 1900s, even though I mentioned that Republicans have been at the forefront and dominated Texas politics for decades, it wasn't until the 1900s that Republicans were actually successful. Conservative Democrats were actually successful. And Democrats dominated in Texas for a very long time. And the one thing I like to tell everyone is that politics is cyclical. When my family and I first came to the United States, we moved to Houston. We came from the Caribbean to Houston. Texas was blue. Jimmy Carter won in Texas. And after that, you saw this slow evolution of Republicans winning. And then for decades, Republicans were the stalwart, were dominant in Texas politics. And now you're seeing Texas become more purple, which means we're red as far as our statewide leadership is still Republican, but you're seeing more and more Democrats win. And so when you see the mixture of the colors, red and blue, that's when you call a state purple. So you'll see a lot of social scientists, hear a lot of political scientists, and they will say that Texas is becoming purple, and that's what they mean. So the rise of the Republican Party in Texas started in 1961 when John Tower was elected to the United States Senate. We currently have two Republican United States Senators, John Cornyn and Ted Cruz. But this began with the rise of the Republican Party in 1961 under John Tower. Then in 1978, we had Bill Clements when he was elected governor. And then in 1992, that was the first time we saw Republicans to hold both U.S. Senate seats, and currently they still do. As I mentioned, those currently are John Cornyn and Ted Cruz. And since 1998, Republicans had won every single statewide election. And when we say statewide, because we have obviously quite a few state reps who are Democrats. When we mean statewide, we mean governor, land commissioner, a lot of the positions that we've covered in this textbook, lieutenant governor, all of those positions are still currently red. Now, Governor Abbott is up for re-election, and there's a lot of rumors that Beto O'Rourke is going to compete against him. And if he doesn't, Harris County Judge Lena Hidalgo will compete against the governor. Now, what happens is, as we mentioned, Texas has our primary. We have it in March. So whoever the Democrats are who are going to compete for governor against Governor Abbott, they will run in March. All Democrats will go to the polls and decide who they want. But for now, we are hearing that Beto O'Rourke is definitely planning to run on the Democrat side. So we shall see if he does. We shall see if anyone else viable will challenge him on the Democrat side. There are rumors of contenders on the Republican side. We shall see if Governor Abbott will prevail, or if someone viable challenges him on the Republican side, and that will happen in March as well. So both the winners on the Republican and Democrat side will get together, and then they will run in November, and we will see who our new governor will be. So this is quite exciting, and all of this will be occurring in 2022. So this will be exciting to see who our next governor will be. Let's see. Negative campaigning. Negative campaigning, a lot of people say that it doesn't have an impact. Very few times does it actually help, but we've seen that it's not been very helpful thus far. So, party realignment. That means it's the transition from one party to the next. And we saw a party realignment in Texas. As we just mentioned, 1998 was the full realignment. Partisan identification. Again, that's your personal attachment to a political party over the other. We're seeing more and more people feeling that based on where the national politics is going, they do not feel comfortable aligning with one party or being affiliated with one party or the other. But partisan identification refers to the fact that you align with one party over the other. In other words, you will say, I'm a Democrat or I'm a Republican. That is partisan identification. Okay, pulling up strong Republican support in Texas. Strong Republican support occurs in the suburbs, Fort Worth area, Midland, Odessa, the Panhandle, East Texas. I did have coffee, I promise. East Texas rural counties and the Hill Country. This weekend, I was in the Hill Country, and I saw many signs saying, this is Trump country. The Trump signs are still out in the Hill Country. So again, Republican support, especially in Texas, the suburbs, Fort Worth area, Midland, Odessa, Panhandle, rural areas, and the Hill Country. Now, there are exceptions. That doesn't mean everyone in those areas vote Republican. But that's where you get a lot of your strong Republican support. Now, here's the kicker. In Houston in particular, suburbs, one suburb, the city I used to live in for decades, has just turned blue, Sugar Land. So Sugar Land, Missouri City are considered Houston suburbs, and those two cities have now turned blue. Fort Bend County, considered a Houston suburb, is now blue, meaning those three entities I just mentioned, Sugar Land, Missouri City, Fort Bend County, they're now Democrat controlled. And so there are exceptions to this list. Where you see weak Republican support and strong Democrat support, South Central, the major cities, Austin, Dallas, Houston, San Antonio, and Southwest Texas. And here is why Democrats feel they have a strong position and point to turn Texas blue. If the strong hold of Democrat politics is in the major cities, again, Houston, San Antonio, Dallas, and Austin, that means, and those are the areas that we're seeing the largest amount of growth. Those are also the areas that we're seeing the largest amount of new voter registration. And if you go back to the video that I did about why did Texas remain red, you saw a lot of growth in those areas, but it just wasn't enough to turn Texas blue. So in the meantime, you have a lot of people coming in from the DNC, the Democrat National Committee. Beto O'Rourke himself has several PACs that are working on Texas, specifically Texas, to turn Texas blue, and working on those main areas. And they're also working on the suburbs. So we shall see if that happens. The presidential election map that you have in your textbook for 2016 and 2018 looks very daunting if you're a Democrat. Lots and lots of red. I mean, there's a lot of area to cover if you're going to turn Texas blue. However, again, the major cities, which a lot of growth is occurring, where large populations, they're all blue. And Democrats are working hard, and they think that they can continue to turn those areas more and more blue. And they think that they can now, in their hopes to infiltrate the suburb and rural areas. We shall see. Based on the last two presidential elections, the rural areas, Hill Country, those areas, they're pretty much staying red. But remember what I said earlier. In politics, everything is cyclical. What is red will turn blue and will turn back red. Especially if you have a strong person with a strong platform. Meaning you had a strong person like Donald Trump. His supporters loved him. His opponents and people who didn't like him, hated him. He was a lightning rod. So strong with his supporters, very strong with his opponents. And that determines where states go. A lot of the time, if you have a strong person, it will realign or de-align politics. The Latino population is in play in Texas. When I say in play, both parties are wooing and pursuing the Latino population. And depending on who is on the ballot, and depending on which polling or stats you look at, Latinos are voting Republican from as low as 40th to as high as 46th percentile. So Latinos are the key in Texas and Florida and in other Republican states where they are becoming the largest minority party. But unlike African Americans, which vote overwhelmingly Democrat, Latinos are not doing that. They are looking at each individual candidate and they are making their decisions individually. And so Latinos are in play. And really the stronghold you saw by the border in Texas, Latinos were anticipated by Beto O'Rourke and his PAC and the DNC to vote overwhelmingly for Joe Biden, and that did not happen. One of the last stops that President Trump did while leaving office was to go to the border and thank many in the Latino community for supporting him as heavily as they did. President Joe Biden did not come to Texas when he was campaigning. So we shall see when he runs for re-election if that will change and if making a stop in Texas will impact Texas and impact the voters. Precinct conventions, that is a gathering of citizens within each precinct, and they vote on the party's primary. And it's only the people who vote in the party's primary who can go to the precinct convention. I apologize if that sounded funny. So let me go back. Precinct conventions are citizens within a precinct, but only those who voted in the primary can attend the precinct convention. And so it allows voters in each party to seek their party's presidential nomination. So that's what you do. And a lot of it starts at the county level. So precinct convention has a lot of power at the county level. Figure 5.3 in your textbook is excellent. It shows you how your political party organization starts. It starts at the bottom for the county. That's where we have a lot of organization. It shows the 3 levels of state party organization in Texas. Primary voters will elect precinct and county chairs who will serve as county executive committees, and then they will attend conventions that will elect delegates to higher conventions, and then that will continue to fill out the party structure. And your table 5.3 in your textbook is excellent in showing how it goes from the county level all the way up to the state level. So that is Chapter 5, Party Election, Party Politics in Texas. Texas is pretty fun. It's a fun state to live in. We have all kinds of people. It's very diverse thoughts. One of the things I miss about having our classroom is having personal interaction. I would often do role playing and have many members in the class participate in precinct conventions. I'm hopefully going to be back on campus in the fall. I've often thought that it's much more personal, much better. But again, any questions you do have on this chapter or anything, please do not hesitate to email at jackie@valleyprojects.com. And again, this is Chapter 5. You should be start hearing from me beginning of next week on your grade, and I will send a new syllabus because of the snowstorm and other things. We're behind, and it's not quite reflective and accurate. So you guys stay careful. Be careful out there. hopefully no more winter or anything, any kind of storms. Okay, bye.